Well, welcome everybody. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate you being here for Red Academy. That stands for Real Estate Dreams. That's what our, logo is, and stuff like that. And so we want to inspire all your real estate dreams, or Jason's real estate dreams, as the case may be, right? So we have just a few things that are on our agenda tonight. Stephanie's going to go first and kind of tell you where things are. And then we've got Ryan from First Federal, Ryan Lidke, if I'm going to say your name correctly, and he's going to talk after Stephanie. And then I'm going to tell you about a little bit about the buyer journey. I'll tell you what's in your folders and stuff like that. And BEAC contract that's up here on the screen, that stands for Buyers Exclusive Agency Contract. That's the Indiana Association of Realtors title on the contract that they have written up for us. And then Stephanie's going to go last and kind of tell you what happens at the closing table, why you come to here. The next two classes that we're offering, we have 4 first-time buyer classes. The first one is preparing financially, and this is the second one. And then submitting the offer has got all the details of the purchase agreement. And so you have charts in your folders there that look like these. And so there's one of those for the purchase agreement as well. So that's class number 3 in August. And then class number 4 is in October, and that's going from pending to closing. So it's the whole journey of it. So anyway, Stephanie,
Hello.
what you got?
You. My name is Stephanie Whitaker Bush. I am a sales rep here at Meridian Title Corporation. This is my office, so you guys feel free to, there's a restroom right when you walked in. We've got snacks, obviously, waters. If you need anything additional, just kind of wave your hand and I'm happy to go run out and grab it for you. But I'm going to give my elevator spiel at the very end.
At
So
the
I'll
end.
turn
She
it
goes
over
last.
to Diane.
Because closing is the last thing you get to do, right? All right. So if I'm hopefully not just connecting with this little doodad, next is going to be Ryan. Hi, Ryan. We don't have a picture of Ryan. We have a picture of Sam, but Sam is not with us. And I love that. I love that what he's doing tonight. His son won is it soccer? Or baseball. Baseball. His son won their baseball thing last night. So now they have a playoff tonight. And that's inspired. We're totally family first. And so I'm like, yeah, go. And so Ryan was generous enough to come.
Absolutely. And actually Sam is coaching as well.
Oh, that's right. He's the
And,
coach.
and yeah, so we're proud of Sam and his son, his whole family, really, because they're all great.
All right. So tell us about mortgage pre-qualification.
Yeah. So pre-qualification is usually the first step with us in the process. Just want to talk quickly about what we need. We really don't need all this stuff, but if you give us this stuff up front, it really makes everything smoother and more accurate later on. And we avoid problems and potential problems later on down the road. So we like to have proof of income. So last 30 days worth of pay stubs, last 2 years of W-2s. If you don't have W-2, Social Security award letter, or last 2 years of tax returns, helps us make sure you can qualify based on income. Proof of assets, so last 2 months of bank statements, quarterly investment statements. Cash on hand does not count as an acceptable source. That's because of federal regulations. We do have to be able to track it. So it needs to be in your bank account for at least 90 days. So make sure it's in your bank account. This is the first step because one, you need to know what you can qualify for, what you can actually afford, how much money you're going to need for the down payment and the closing cost. Also, most realtors will not show a house without a pre-qualification letter.
Well, we can't. It's the law now. In Indiana, it's state law. We can't show you without
it. And obviously, it shows the sellers that you're serious and a qualified buyer as well.
True.
Yeah. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was what we call the 4 C's of a loan approval. The first one is capacity. That is your income stable to cope with the mortgage payments? Do you have consistent 2-year history of employment? And want to make sure we hit on the fact that income, as you know it, is not necessarily income as federal regulations allow us to qualify. So we do need consistent 2-year history to demonstrate you can and be anticipated to continue to make that monthly mortgage payment on time and to the full amount. Credit, we pull a tri-marriage report. It's not going to be the same as Credit Karma. So a lot of people don't know this. Credit Karma is is a fairly accurate representation of credit score, but credit scores are weighted based on what type of credit you're applying for. So if you're applying for a credit card versus a car versus a house or a couch, you're going to have different credit scores, and a lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So me personally, if I'm applying for a car, my credit score is probably going to be about a 740. If I'm applying for a house, it's probably going to be about a 710. But if I'm applying for a couch, it'll be about an 800.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
also, we want to make sure your score and your credit usage demonstrate a history of ability to make payments on time. So part of our job in helping you get approved is making sure not only that we protect ourselves, but also that we protect you. We want to make sure you're not getting in over your head. So capital is the next part of that, which means do you have the liquid funds to make the down payment and closing costs and any reserves if needed? So depending on your situation, there may be some reserves in there. Do you need gift funds or seller assistance? Obviously, if you need seller assistance, that we would communicate that to Diane so she knows what.
It's in your pre-approval letter.
Yeah. And then you would talk with Sam or myself, your loan originator, about the different loan programs because there's multiple loan programs. A lot of people don't realize that. Oftentimes, I'm presenting 3 or 4 programs and educating the individuals on why they might choose each one and letting them choose the one that works best for them. And then as far as collateral, obviously you're going to need an appraisal be completed on the house. The appraisal does have to cover at least the purchase price of the house in order for us to qualify. If the appraisal comes in lower, that doesn't necessarily prevent you from being able to buy the house, but it could potentially change dynamics such as loan to value and debt to income ratios. In particular, the loan to value may require you get PMI at that point in time.
Can you explain debt to income and PMI? What are those?
Yeah, so debt to income is a calculation of how much debt you carry on a monthly basis versus how much money you bring in on your income, and that's qualifying income. So again, I hit on it briefly, but qualifying income is a little different than what you actually make. And that's because we have federal regulations we have to abide by to demonstrate you've got 2 years consistent income to be able to afford that monthly payment. What was the other one? A PMI.
What's PMI?
So PMI is private mortgage insurance. It's also sometimes just called MI, mortgage insurance. That actually is a program that allows you to buy a house with less than 20% down. So it is an insurance program that protects the bank in case you foreclose, and really in case another market collapse were to happen, like 2008 again. But without that, you would have to have 20% down. And with housing prices what they are, that's very difficult for a lot of people right now. So it's a program that allows you to be able to get into the house with, in some cases, as little as 3% down.
For a conventional loan.
For a conventional loan.
Not just a FHA loan.
FHA is 3.5%. Conventional can be as low as 3.
Oh, yeah, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Anybody have any questions? I'm not on here to switch to the question screen.
How much does PMI usually add to your monthly
Good question.
That's a great question. So
payment?
that actually depends on the loan type. So, for example, FHA is a lower PMI requirement than conventional mortgages. That said, we talked earlier before we got on this, there's always pros and cons. The con to the FHA PMI is that it never goes away. However, you can always refinance the house to a conventional mortgage once you get to the equity position. So usually it equates to for FHA, I think it's 0.35%. So it's not a lot, but there is an upfront requirement that gets rolled in as well. That is a percent of the loan value. And then for conventional, it's usually right around 0.5% of the value that gets added to the payment.
Does it help?
And that's in perpetuity till the mortgage is paid.
Yes.
Technically.
Yeah. So it becomes part of the payment. And that gets taken into account in the payment. Yep.
So once you get past 20% of the cost of the house on a conventional one, can you drop your PMI then?
Yeah,
Has it always been?
Don't you have to go to 78%?
it's 78%. Yep.
Which is so silly when it's 20% down, why you have to have that extra 2% to get to 78, but that's what it is.
You can do it at 80%. You would need to do an appraisal at that point.
Mm.
So you may have to pay for an appraisal. It could cost $400, is usually $400 to $500 to do that. But let's say housing prices continue to go up and you can get out of PMI in 3 years. And you might have to pay PMI for 8 years if you didn't. The amount that you would pay would significantly save you if you got rid of the PMI early. So it could be to your benefit to make that payment for the appraisal early if the housing prices went up fast enough.
But if you didn't do that, would it automatically fall off at a certain
There's a
point?
date
78.
request
Yes.
for it to fall off,
Okay,
that and if you don't request it for that date, it does
Yeah.
stay on until it was scheduled
Yeah.
to come.
It
There's 2
automatically,
dates.
automatically comes off at 78% based on day one.
The purchase price at that time. Which, so like for someone like you, Eli, when you're paying on a loan, um, you're paying for 30 years. The first payment is like, let's just say your payment's $100 a month because I'm not that good at math. So the first payment is like $1 of principal and $99 of interest. And then the next one's $2 of principal and $98 of interest. By the time you get the end, you're paying, $98 of principal and $2 of interest. So it takes, because you're paying all interest at the beginning, it takes years to get that to go. So that's why sometimes they'll tell you to like make extra payments. Like if your payment is $1,000 a month, let's say your payment's $1,200 a month because there's 12 months and I'm not that good at math. So if you paid an extra $100 every month, it's like you paid a 13th payment. But you're putting it to principal, you're getting your principal down faster. So
Yeah, and we actually have programs internally, Sam and I both do, that we can actually show you how much that can save you over time and how fast that can get you paid off early. So,
yeah.
So they can be beneficial. We can also show you a 20-year versus a 30-year versus a 15-year payment. So you can make an informed decision on, does it make sense to go to a shorter term even and change that dynamic a little bit? Because the shorter the term, the better you're going to be in the principal versus interest on the payments as you go.
So I had a buyer recently ask something about, they looked at on when you go to the closing table and you sign at the end, and they looked at the total amount that they were paying
Yeah.
for, so $100,000 house cost them, I don't know, $1 million or something like that. And you're like, this house is $1 million. No, because you're paying the bank because you didn't have that cash, so that's why
that's how they make their money.
that's right. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So any more questions for Ryan? All right, we're going to move on then. So I'm going to go through with you just quickly. There's this chart is the first chart you have. It says the home buying journey. So if you look for the home buying journey in your folder, that's just a little bit of an explanation. If you want details of this, our whole class number 1 was in detail on this. So I'm just going to fly through this little chart really quickly. You're going to choose a realtor. I thank you guys for working with me. That's great. And then the next thing you're going to do is get your pre-approval letter. So you're going to go to Ryan. Or if you had another lender, that's, but Ryan's here to to hope that you'd work with First Fed. And then we're going to get together as me and you, and we're going to set up a search. So those little guys looking in his, we're going to look around for a house, and then you go tour the houses. And then after you've toured it and you find one, you're going to submit an offer. And then after you've done the offer, then you've got to finish your loan application and go ahead and find homeowners insurance. While you're doing those things, the inspectors start to go out. You're going to attend inspections in person. You want to go to that thing. Now, if a whole house inspection takes 3 or 4 hours, you don't have to go the whole time. You can just go at the last, 30 to 60 minutes of it. Some people want to go for the whole time. So it's easier for your inspector to actually do the inspection without you around, because it takes him longer if you're always there asking questions. So he'd probably prefer you not. There is a whole second folder there from one of the inspection providers that we refer to sometimes. Then you're going to go with me and look at the report, and you're going to review and ask for repairs and all of that. So I'm going to go through it with you. If you were working with a different realtor, your realtor is going to go through it with you. Anyway, and then when we're through and we've negotiated repair, so you negotiate twice. You negotiate on step number 5 when you're submitting an offer, and then you're negotiating again on step number 8 when we're saying, hey, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. I want you to know there is no perfect house out there. If you build a house and you talk to the contractor and you said, I want this, 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 and this, you move in and you're like, I wish I would have done this. Okay. Besides that, even if you bought a spec house, home ownership means things go wrong in a house and you have big expenses in a house. This is one, if you don't want expenses in a house, rent. Like you don't want to be a homeowner if you don't want expenses. So anyway, but after you've gotten through that part, through the repair negotiations, then you can schedule your movers. I don't really recommend you schedule movers until then. Because you don't really know for sure that you're going to proceed to closing until then. And then don't forget, you got to call and order all your utilities. We give you the phone numbers for that. And then closing day, that's what you're going to do here at the title company. And Stephanie will talk to you about that. And then you get to move in. Yay. So that's the chart. So any questions on that general overview of the process? Okay. So then, so a buyer agency agreement. I got to make this little guy go away because I can't see past it. So go away. Okay. So yeah, and I don't have this one in your thing. So if you want that picture. So anyway, the buyer agency agreement, that's a contract. You're signing a legal binding contract between you, the buyer, and me, the realtor. Okay. And it defines what my role is and what my responsibilities to you. It also defines what your responsibilities are. But I have to be in your best interest. I don't know if it's the law, but it's certainly ethical standards that we have to abide by to be National Association of Realtors. And so I can't be looking out for my own interest. I'm there to look out for your own interest. The contract itself is going to outline the services that I'm going to provide for you, how I'm compensated, and the term of the agreement. So the key aspects are the parties, you and me, the time, how long does it last? I typically sign a contract for 6 months. The scope, what are we looking for? Eli just signed a contract with me on Saturday and he's like, okay, but if I happen to go look in Fort Wayne, no, then, I don't really service Fort Wayne that much. I mean, Linda has, but no, it might be in your best interest to have it. And you can sign 2 contracts with the Fort Wayne person looking for Fort Wayne stuff and me looking for St. Joe County and surrounding area stuff. And then in the financial terms, it talks about what I charge. So in essence, the buyer agency agreement is a legally binding document that helps ensure a smooth, fair home buying experience, both for you and for me. There's some reasons people are like, oh, I got to get back into it again. Yeah, so here's kind of what's in it, and then I'll go through it. I'm going to go through this really fast at first, and then I'm going to break it down. Okay, so the first paragraphs in it are the parties, and you have that slide, Georgia. This one's in yep, you have a buyer agency contract one. I'm going to slide this up just a little bit for the recording people to be able to see. So anyway, so the first paragraph talks about the introduction, who are the parties and what are the definitions of the parties. And then paragraphs A and B is, yeah, we're going to work together. I'm going to work to find you stuff. And then C is what's the scope? What are, for Eli, if you don't mind me using you, we looked for something in St. Joe County between the prices of, in surrounding areas. Broker compensation tells you what I typically work for. It is negotiable. Now, I may not negotiate, but it is completely negotiable. If you don't want to work for what I charge, you can go find another realtor who will work for less or more or whatever. But it is by law that has to be negotiated. And to be honest, that's kind of why there's changes, and it's been a new law for the last 12 months in Indiana. It's National Association of Realtors thing too. If you're a part, like I am, of National Association of Realtors, you have to work under buyer contract. But anyway, because it's negotiable, I think people didn't really understand that it was negotiable. And it kind of wasn't, because the sellers would sign a contract with the listing agent for this much money, and the listing agent would say, I'm going to pay this much to the buyer side and this much to the seller side. Well, technically, the seller doesn't pay anybody. The buyer pays because you're paying the price of the house, which is the price of the house plus the fees, right? So technically, you're the one paying it all the time. So anyway, it just, this way you agree to what you're going to work for up front. You're going to find an agent that's going to work for what you want up front. And then just agency disclosure, I'm going to explain that, what a limited agent is. I can't disclose certain things. We just went through this on Saturday. Consent to represent other buyers. You got to give me permission to work other buyers, or you don't have to. I don't sign with somebody that doesn't give me permission because I work with lots of people. But the thing is if I'm working with multiple buyers, then, I might have the same buyer and the same price point. Jason and Eli could be looking at the same houses and, I might have to write an offer for Eli and an offer for Jason. And I work with them and I tell them everything I can. I can't disclose about each other, but anyway, recordings, the seller's watching you. Just bear in mind, I don't like to talk price in a house. I don't like to talk how much, you love it. You don't love it too much. You don't hate it too much. And let's not talk about how much we would bid for because they just heard everything we said. Fair housing, because I cannot discriminate as a realtor, it is against the law for me to discriminate. When you're working with any realtor, neither can you. You can't say, I don't want to live in this race neighborhood, or I don't want to, anyway, you can't discriminate on anything like that. So let me slide my little screen down just again to make sure the people on the recording can see these bottom ones. So paragraph I is about confidentiality. I owe you, one of my agency duties is confidentiality. The seller and the listing agent do not owe you confidentiality. Now, if the listing agent is going to do a good job, she shouldn't tell other parties what your offer is, but she could, and the seller certainly could, and they do. They talk about stuff like that. It's so crazy. Like, oh, hey, somebody named so-and-so, they wrote an offer on my house for this much money or whatever. And this buyer didn't want anybody to know they were looking. Like, it's just crazy kind of stuff. So what you do is you can write, there's a confidentiality agreement that we would have you fill that out if that's something you want. And we would send that to the seller before we send your offer. We would say, we have an offer that we've drafted, but we don't want you to share it. So will you sign this confidentiality agreement before? Now, if you're in a bidding war situation, you kind of don't have time for that. You really ought to just write your offer. So paragraphs J and K are just about legal disclaimers. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial planner. And if we had a dispute over our contract, the winning party gets their legal fees paid by the losing party. And then wire fraud is a huge deal. I'm going to go into more detail about that when we get to that part. And it's just, I've read and understand what I'm signing. Okay. So that is that. So these are the things that are in that. Representation. That's the agreement that establishes the agency relationship, meaning that I'm legally obligated to operate in your interest, not the seller's interest. That's one of the good things about signing a buyer contract. The seller knows that agent's working for that buyer, not for me. Because years ago when real estate agency started, everybody did work for the seller. You were trying to get the seller the best price, even if you brought a buyer. And so it's morphed over the years. Services, it says, what are the services that I'm going to provide to you, which is, coordinating showings, preparing offers, finding the properties, negotiating the sale, how I get paid, compensation, the term, how long it's going to last, and exclusivity, the buyer agrees not to work for somebody else. So you can't sign two buyer agency contracts for the same specific scope, because you'd owe two people the money. So anyway, so why use it? It's protection for both parties. It defines expectations and responsibilities, and it protects you from unfavorable situations and from disputes. But some people they look at it and they feel like it's just, it only helps you, the agent, because, it says what you get paid. Not true. It helps you because I legally cannot make any more money. Before we had this kind of thing, a seller could say $5,000 bonus to, an offer by July 31st. I can't take an extra $5,000 without asking you if I can. And would you sign an amendment to change our contract? Or why would I even do that if I'm working in your best interest? Then I should say, hey, they were offering $5,000. Let's see if they'll drop the price $5,000. Let's see if they'll do a carpet allowance for $5,000. It's your money. It's not my money. So there's all kinds of stuff. Transparency is a big deal. It opens and exposes, like a lot of people would be like, oh, a buyer's agent just works for free. No, we don't. I can't work for free. I've got a lot of, busy. I can't work for free, and you don't work for free. I can't work for free. Clear understanding. It helps people understand everything. And then the representation, it talks that I'm working for the buyer, not for the seller. So here's the chart again. I don't think we need to go through it again. I was just kind of like, now that you saw those terms, there's the chart again. Okay, and this is what the actual Indiana state contract. We have different contracts in Michigan than we have in Indiana, and this is too little. If you don't take a picture of this one, if
Okay.
you want this one, I will send you a whole contract for
Okay.
you to see.
All right.
But basically, I'm like, it introduces the parties, and then it says what the buyer agrees to, what the broker agrees to. C is the scope. Broker's compensation talks about, I don't charge a retainer fee, but some agents might. Like, and in fact, I probably would if somebody asked me to find them a property like an hour radius. I'm looking for lake property, and I know I have to go show you this time and this time and this time. I might say, okay, well, your price range is 400,000. I'd like to charge you 1% up front, so you're going to pay me $4,000 up front. So that way, if you never find anything, I've been compensated for driving. I mean, because we don't, as a realtor, you don't make any money until you close. Like, there's nobody paying you any kind of salary. You pay for all your signs, you pay for your gas, you pay for your insurance. You don't make any money. You're spending money until you close something. So something like that, I might ask for a retainer fee. I don't normally. And then, I normally work for 3%. There is no standard. And if there was another realtor in the room, I couldn't even tell you what I work for, because when there's multiple realtors from other companies in the room, that would be like price fixing. I couldn't talk about how much I, charge, stuff like that. And then paragraph E, agency disclosure, that talks about basically what I owe you down on line 99. This is so tiny you can't see it, but line 99, I owe you trust and loyalty and confidentiality to not tell the other parties what I owe confidential to you, and accounting to how much a thing's going to cost, and disclosure. It's my job to disclose to you if I overhear the listing agent in the grocery store on the phone with her seller, hey, I think we're getting an offer in, you should really take only 97 for that instead of holding out for 100,000. If I heard her say that, I have to tell you, I owe you disclosure to say, hey, I heard them say they would take 97. Well, if you are looking at a house represented by, like, it's my listing, or at Inspired, we consider them all limited agencies. So if like Linda DeMel has a listing, or Kim Powell has a listing, we consider it. And I can't disclose to you what I might know about them. But if it wasn't their listing, I wouldn't know. So that's what limited is. I lose disclosure. I still owe you everything else, but I lose disclosure. And so then you give authorization. You check that, yes, you give authorization, and you give me permission in this contract to consent other buyers. And this tells you about the recordings and the fair housing and the confidentiality, meaning the seller doesn't owe you that. And then legal, this says, hey, I'm not a lawyer or a financial planner or whatever. And this says what happens to attorney's fees. Okay, I'm going to read this wire fraud paragraph. Like, I know it's teeny tiny. I don't think I can make it any bigger than that. But in the world we live in today, there's terrible, horrible humans out there that, like, for whatever reason, they're so smart in how they can do stuff, and they have to really work to get it done. So why they won't apply that to something legal and helpful, I don't know. But they would stalk and send you email or stuff like that looks like it's from me, or looks like it's from your lender, or looks like it's from the title company. I mean, it looks just like it. They've copied our logo, and they've
Take a picture, they watch the transaction through like a Gmail account or something. When the process starts, they wait for closings, they watch the figures come in, their openings say, oh, hey, we saw that this amount of money is due. By the way, wire instructions have changed, so send it here. And it looks like it's coming from Diane with her picture.
right.
I mean, they're getting really, really creative. So
It's
I
so
don't mean to interrupt.
No.
This has been,
It's a big deal.
I think in the last 4
Yes,
years,
you're right.
It's the wire fraud has increased. It was like 800% or something insane. So what I say,
Wow.
Fifth Third Bank has been Meridian Title's bank for 83 years or whatever. If we were to just suddenly change our wiring instructions, because the title company is where you would wire the money as a buyer, we would never just send an email. It would be,
Well, and I usually like for you to go there and pick it up on paper. Like, they do have secure email that they do now, but I'd rather you just go to the title company and pick it up in person. Or if you can't, I'll go to the title company and pick it up, and I'll deliver it to you,
so as far as wiring anything is concerned, obviously this is a large purchase, but anytime you're having to issue a wire or do anything with wire, just be really cognizant that that number that you're wiring to is that number that you need to be wiring to, because once that money's gone,
Didn't they make it a treasurer's check anymore?
So, in the state of Indiana, good funds is anything less than $10,000. So anything less than $10,000, we can take a cashier's check. If it's $10,001, it's gotta be wired.
Yeah.
And that's just Indiana. Michigan doesn't have that. So we kind of thought maybe that would change the view of that. Like, I could bring in a cashier's check for $100,000 right across the state line, but we can't do it here.
It's so odd,
It is. So, yeah,
but I kind of feel like it's your protection.
it is.
I mean, that's the reason they made it the law. So anyway, so then the fourth page of it is just that acknowledgement that it's a contract and your heirs are, all of that. So anyway, okay. Ooh, and so that's the chart again. I'm going to make this guy go away again because I can't see past it. So that's the chart again. Any questions on the chart before I kind of go and do some other explanations? Like any questions on what buyer agency means or anything like that? Anybody online, you can unmute yourself and ask if you guys have questions. I'll be able to hear you.
When we were talking to the lender earlier, I think we might have skipped over borrowing funds or gifted funds for a down payment.
That's a
Like
great
if I don't have
question.
the amount of money I need.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm going to try and turn it towards you.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. So depending on the loan type, there's different loan types that we would have to look at and what you actually qualify for. Most loan types do allow gift funds. They cannot be from the seller under most circumstances. There's a couple of exceptions, but they're very narrow exceptions. And there's certain things we'd have to really dive into and make sure of. But 99.99% of the time, it cannot come from the seller. That's a conflict of interest. So yeah, and you can also get grants. There are grants out there. Most of them are for first-time home buyers. Most of them are for low-income borrowers. There are a couple that do have a little bit higher income possibilities attached to them. But generally speaking, those are going to be for first-time buyers.
And then what about like relative gift funds? Like let's just say a dad wants to give
Yeah.
money, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Are y'all doing that kind of thing too?
Yeah.
Depends what the.
Depends, yeah. Okay.
Just we have to be able to track the money. We have to know what the relationship to the person, to the individual is. So it can't be you just met some person off the street and they gave you $20,000.
Well, and it can't be you have a promissory note to pay it back. It's got to be, and you guys, if you gift money, you have to send a letter that says, I'm gifting this money. I'm not expecting, paid back.
Right.
Can you send that to?
The lender has to see it.
We will send you a letter. Yeah, we need to see that. So there's certain forms. And again, like FHA has very specific forms and very specific verbiage that needs to be in there. So it depends on the loan type. There's a lot of different variables that go into that, but generally speaking, yeah, has to be a form that you say it is a gift. Yeah, cannot be a loan.
Right.
There's no problem with paying over $10,000. I mean, you have to
Nope.
report it to the
Oh,
government.
Nope.
No, you could, yeah, no, I had a young buyer just this year whose parents gave so much when we got to closing and I didn't know that because they had just done it with the lender. And when we got to closing and I'm getting 2-3 days before I'm getting the settlement statement and she has to bring to closing so much money. And I'm like, and I called the lender before I called my buyer. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, oh yeah, mom and dad came in and it's like, oh wow. And they gave her so much because it would make her monthly payment so much lower. And they wanted her to have a lower payment. So they had the money and she's an only child. And so,
Might have to have the PMI if they have.
oh, for sure. She definitely didn't have to have that. Right. Yeah. Right. So I do want to jump on to oh, I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead. Oh, Eli, sorry. That's a good
That's a
question.
great question. So,
Diane, we didn't hear Eli. Could you repeat that for the recording?
Yeah, the question was what would qualify for low income? What qualifies to be a low, because you said that some of the grant programs you
Yeah.
need a low income.
So a lot of the programs are 80% of what's called area median income. Your area median income is based on the county and the city. It's also based on family size. So if it's just one individual, it's going to be a lot lower. If you've got a husband and wife with 5 children, that AMI goes way higher. So it is not a set amount per se. It is a percent of the area's median income. And some are ultra low buyers, some are just low buy, low income, some are ultra low income. So there's some
And
variance.
so there would be charts, like
There,
he would have a
yeah.
chart, but like he can't even just give you one chart because this program has this spread and this program has that spread. Yeah. So
Some use USDA's guidelines, some use totally different guidelines. So yeah, I can't even just tell you it's one chart. I can't say.
thanks. I'm sorry.
That's a
I
great
put your
question.
hand.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Jill.
So when you talk about first-time home buyers getting these grant programs, what's the definition of a first-time home buyer? Because it's my understanding that if you have owned a house or lived in a house for so many years, you can qualify as a quote unquote first-time home buyer.
That's correct. It's 3 years. And technically, if you have a husband and wife living together, but only one of them is on title, and the other one wants to buy a home, technically they qualify as a first-time home buyer, even though they've been living in a home. So
Even if, so like, let's just say husband's on title of the first house, but even if, and Mrs. is not on the first house title,
Yep.
but then even if husband's going to go on the title for the second house that they're selling and buying, even though he's going to be on title, Mrs. can get the first time home buyer program?
again, depending
Depends
on
on
the
the
program.
program. Got it.
There's a program
Yeah.
that we have.
Right. Maybe.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it is. There is a program we have that it's only one person on the loan has to be a first-time home buyer. The other
That's so-
person doesn't have to be.
That's so crazy.
So yeah, again, depends on. But there's other programs that say, well, if the other person goes on there, you got to calculate their income, and it could take them out of the program altogether. So we got to be very careful sometimes on that and how that works.
Got it.
So there's so many variables to it. But it's
Good question,
program
Jill.
specific, but it's a great question.
Yeah, good question, Jill. All right, let's see if we can't finish the last couple things that we have prepared, and then we'll go back to some more questions. So, when we did that first little chart and we talked about the whole program, and I said, what we're going to do today is the buyer agency contract, and then we're also going to talk about the looking for the search, and the little graphic was the little guy looking for searching for houses. So this is what it looks like on my computer for me when I go in and I put all these kinds of things that you want in your house. This is way more specific than you guys can put in on realtor.com or wherever you might be searching other than with me. So if you let me do it through my MLS system, I can get you a lot more detailed look. There's still things that I can't really look for, and more things will fall in your search if we're more vague. And so it doesn't really hurt for it to fall in your search and search online. But when somebody's looking for something really, really specific, it's just better for us to do it. Then I'm going to set you up for this thing called Collab Center. It's for collaboration or whatever. And your screen looks a little bit like this. I'm going to make that go away again. So it looks a little bit like this, and I couldn't scroll. So I took pictures of various things. Like this is where it starts for a guy named Richard, and he didn't have any updates since his last visit on that one. And then come back in here. And then that's the next one. And like I scrolled up on that same first screen and it said, hey, he had 12 matched listings and he had 3 preserved listings that were holding out for him. And we haven't had any specific ones that I added. So it didn't say anything for that. And then he can always like contact my agent and stuff like that down right on his site. And it categorizes. He'd gone through and he had a couple he hadn't decided about yet. He didn't have any in favorites right now. He had 3 that were like maybe, and he had 10 there. He's like, yeah, those are no's. Either he's driven by them and he doesn't like them or whatever. So you can categorize them in there. And that kind of tells me when it's time for you to go looking at houses, I'm like, oh, right. He doesn't, like, and I just tell him, put them in your favorites. If you want to go see that one, let's put them in your favorites. And that's how I know which ones. So you don't have to like list them all. And then when you go from here and you click or any one of those pages, because that was all scrolled on one thing, when you jump into let's go see the 2 undecideds, for example. So you click on 2 and that's what would pop up. The 2 would pop up and it kind of looks like this. And so this is how you can favorite it, possible it, reject it, tag it, comment on it, whatever. And then on the next screen, I'm going to show you when I clicked on the three dots, you can comment it, tag the listing. I've never really tagged a listing. I don't really know what, but request a showing, it's going to send me a message that you want to see that one stuff. It sends me an email. And then the other thing is like if I click into it, like if I click into this listing here, then more information pops up for you than you can get on, going to realtor.com or something like that. This is the kind of stuff that you can find on realtor.com. That's fine. You can also click on the map view or the street view and kind of go into more stuff. But if you scroll down below this one, then it's got property information a little bit more detailed than you get on MLS, but it has documents attached and property history and stuff. The documents would be like his seller's disclosure is uploaded. If they have a list of utility bills, it's uploaded. If they have floor plans that aren't in pictures, they're just attached. Those are uploaded. So by doing the Collab Center, there's things that you can get down here that you can't get anywhere else. So that's why I like for you to have that. So then we're going to go and tour our houses, and that's what it looks like. Oh, let's look. Oh, let's look. So we're touring houses. So now more questions. Who else has more questions? Anybody here? Anybody online? Nope.
Yeah, Dan, I have a couple more for you.
Yeah, great.
So I don't remember if we've talked about it. Have you talked about earnest money and like where that goes and how much I need?
Good question. We did not talk about earnest money. I'm going to scroll through and talk about I didn't put this one in there twice. Nope, sorry. Hang on. This is the one I want. So earnest money happens when you're submitting an offer. And typically in our area, earnest money is about 1%. So for a $100,000 house, you're typically going to write a check for $1,000. And then what was the question, Michelle?
What happens to that earnest money?
Where's it
Like,
go?
where does it go?
Yeah, it does get deposited right away. It is going to leave your checking account. Okay. So typically you're going to write it to the listing office. Sometimes you write it to the buyer agent office, but you're going to write a check. It can be a personal check. It can be a cashier's check, and you write it to us, and it does get cashed immediately. But it is your money that applies to all of your closing costs at the end, the money that you have to bring for your down payment and stuff like that. It is your money. It's just a promise to the seller that you're not going to get cold feet and back out. So for example, I've got not one, but two negotiations going on right now that the seller, we're not 100% sure that the seller's going to do all the repairs that they want. So we're waiting right now for the seller to get a couple more bids and find out if they're going to do things. And even though on one of those two, one, they like totally want the house if the seller's going to fix all the stuff. The other one, she doesn't really want it either way. She's ready to go look. She's not, but because she has earnest money, she's not going to go look until she finds out if they won't do anything. Now, if they won't do the stuff, she might let her earnest money go and walk away anyway. But she, anyway, so yeah. So like
A lot of times it's not just the real estate office that's holding the earnest money.
oh yeah, sometimes
They
you
have
guys do.
Meridian hold it a lot, or
Yeah.
a title company will hold it all, so we
A lot
keep
of
it in
times.
our escrow account. And then we can just put it on the settlement statement at the very end of the whole transaction. And
Yeah, sometimes you do write it to the title company. That's not uncommon. So did that answer the question, Michelle?
Yes, but it gave me another one.
Okay.
If we can't agree on the fixes for the house, that there's things that are just not are non-negotiable for the buyer, they automatically lose their earnest money, or
No, if you've written an offer, and it depends on how your agent wrote the offer, but if you've written an offer contingent on the inspections being satisfactory, then the inspections have to be satisfactory. And if they're not, and the seller won't fix it, then you should get your earnest money back to get out of the deal. They should give it back to you. You do have to prove that inspections are all paid for and those aren't going to be liens on the property and things like that. Because even though you don't want to buy the house and you don't want to lose your earnest money, those people did inspections. They did a job. You owe them for their job.
and also take into consideration, while you're under contract, that seller is taking their home off the market.
So no other buyer can look at it.
Correct. So that's kind of another reason why sometimes people will lose their earnest money as the seller.
Jason's looking at house meeting is going. And the ladies who get these bids, they have to be licensed to fund and not cousin Charlie down the road.
Correct. Correct.
Just a half-assed job.
Correct.
But he's put his earnest money down and they say, well, we're not gonna fix the furnace. And then he says, well, then I can't buy the house. Does he lose that money?
No, he gets that money back.
Yeah.
If he's made it contingent on inspections and they won't do the repairs. Now, part of the purchase agreement, when we're signing a purchase agreement, which next class is about all those details, specifically says you can't be like, oh, the hinge is loose on the cabinet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It has to be the major things. And sometimes the buyer might proceed. So I had a transaction that the seller wasn't going to do everything, but we got a really good price on the house. They'd already had a fall through before my buyer wrote on it. And so we kind of got a pretty good deal. Like, I'm sure they don't want to wait around. They want to get sold. And so we kind of did well. And they had an appraisal higher than our price by like $14,000 higher than what we were offering. And so then when they're like, we'll do this, but we can't do all this. And my buyer was really nervous, but she took on about $5,000 of her own repairs that she was going to have to pay for after closing because she got a good deal on the house in the first place. And if we go look for other houses, they're going to have things that have to be done too. And I didn't feel like she was going to get any better house, than this one. So even, so she decided to proceed. It's totally up to her because they weren't repairing them the way we wrote her contract. She would have gotten her earnest money back, but she decided to proceed anyway. So, and then if you change your mind and don't want to buy it, the contract reads they really could sue you for specific performance. Twice in my life, I had buyers get cold feet and want to back out. And I had to explain to them, I'm like, okay, for sure, you're not getting your earnest money back. You're going to lose your earnest money. But they could sue you for specific performance, which means make you buy the house. And in both cases, the sellers just gave them their earnest money back and they were fine. But if you just change your mind and you didn't even give them any kind of options, that is an option for them to sue you for that. They don't want to do that because they don't want to tie up the property. They want to go ahead and get it back on market most of the time. But you got to know you're signing a legal binding contract. So any other questions from the gallery? I don't hear any from the gallery at the moment. Okay, we're going to go back to where were we? So we finished all these. Thanks for your patience. Okay, and Stephanie's going to talk to you about closing.
Hello.
Yay.
So, this is Meridian Title Corporation, and sometimes people wonder why they need title insurance. And the easiest way I can explain it is if you get insurance on your car or your home, you're insuring everything that can potentially happen in the future. When you purchase title insurance, it's a one-time fee and it insures everything in the past.
Insures the past instead of the future.
So nobody's gonna come knock on your door and say, hi, I have a deed that my grandpa signed over to me. This house should be mine. So we go through a lot of grueling steps to make sure that when we give that property over, when we record the deed from the seller to the buyer, that everything on that property is good and free for the new buyer. So we have a physical search plant. They go through everything. We look at who's previous owners, if there's any liens, judgments, marital settlements, delinquent taxes, there's all kinds of things that can appear on title. And our job, whatever does show up, we have to make sure that those are all satisfied and met before the time that closing comes. And that can look a lot of different things. We see liens from, delinquent taxes, obviously, but manufacturer's liens, people started work and never paid the contractor.
Got a new roof and didn't pay the contract.
Got a new roof, yeah. Or, sometimes, most of the time, it's very simple. If you did a search on my house, you would show that there's an outstanding mortgage that we're currently paying on. That's not a big deal. So we work then with that mortgage company of the seller. We call them, we get a payoff letter, we make sure it's good through closing, we send the money out. So what we do here at Meridian is we take all the information that Ryan gave us, we take all the information that Diane gave us, and throughout the process, we communicate as effectively as we possibly can, that there's no hiccups or bumps in the road and that everything's good. You as a buyer or a seller probably have nothing to do with the title company until the very last part when we
But we do.
Yes.
We're talking
Yes.
to them the whole time.
We talk the whole time, yeah. So what we try to tell our agents and lenders, just make sure that the people who come in, we have to notarize their signatures. So make sure they have an updated valid ID, preferably a driver's license, state ID works too. And that the funds, obviously anything over 10 grand needs to be wired. Anything under 10 grand, we can take as a check.
But
So-
not a personal check, has to be a
Yeah.
bank check.
It has to
Certified
be a bank
funds.
check.
Yep.
So when you come in through those doors with your agent and your lender and Our lovely receptionist seats you in the lobby. Most of the time, closings take about an hour. Most of the work's already done, making sure everything's freed and cleared. But we get the package from the loan officer. We put it all together with our stuff. Anything Diane needs us to have signed, the closer's going to take most of the time. The buyers and their agent into a room. We get all the loan paperwork filled out. Just because there's nobody gathers together like that anymore when a lender's involved, because there's a lot of personal information in a loan package. So we've got
Yeah, years ago, everybody was in the room at the same time.
that's why we had this table, because everybody would come in and you'd all sit around, and well, now everybody has phones and you can take pictures of everything. So we take the buyers in first, they sign, we take the sellers in, then usually, assuming everybody's all getting along together.
Which sometimes they're not.
Sometimes they do not. They gather together, we make copies in the back, we cut our checks as long as the wires are all in and we have all the money that we need. Then we can cut our checks. If there's money that we are missing, if the buyer's wire hasn't hit yet, or the lender got tied up, or the lender's whole entire system goes down, which happened today, it can take a minute. So we can't cut a check until we have all the money. In that situation, it's what we call a dry closing. Everything works out in the end. I've seen one time that it did not work out because the buyer's lender went belly up over the middle of the night. It's crazy.
Wow.
So speaking of that, we don't like to do keys. So we don't want to hold all the stuff and be responsible to give it to, just because we don't really know. So yeah, again, title insurance is just making sure that everything's free and cleared. We we order the inspections, we get those invoices, we send those checks out, we take care of everything so that when you walk out of here as a buyer, your next step after you get your key is to make your first mortgage payment. We make sure that the homestead exemption's filed in your name, and we make sure everything's taken care of. So
Yep.
Do you guys have any questions? There's a lot that we do. Sometimes people come in here, they think we're the bank, they don't understand.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you have a story. Okay.
Go to visit my best friend that I grew up with.
Okay.
Dom and Aaron, and they moved from Auburn, Indiana to Oregon 2 years ago.
Wow.
So they're trying to buy about 150 acres of land.
Wow, okay.
And the property was owned by a lady that is part of the cartel. And so when they put the offer in and it went to the title company says, we're not gonna do anything with this property. There's too many unforeseen things with the cartel and that property. We can't do it. So they tried another title company started digging, and there's all kinds of cartel and state and government lien.
Wow.
Like it's like blacklisted.
Right, so they just last week said, okay, well, if
We're not doing this
one, we just went out because we don't want to get into some mess, especially if we bought the property, we start building a house and the cartel comes back.
Yeah.
What?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because, and Diane, you might know this, you might not. So Meridian Title is, we're an insurance. We're not the underwriter. We're the insurance company. So think of like, if you go to get your homeowner's insurance and they write on Allstate or whatever. So if you go to a different title company down the road, there's a couple of them. They have one underwriter that they use. Meridian Title uses like 7 today. So if there's a situation or there's an issue, if at the request of the agent, we can flip underwriters and see if we can try to figure something else out that can work. So again, you would probably never even know if that happened, but for you guys, it is good.
Right. And I didn't know that. That's
the
cool.
title company protected them.
Yeah.
Getting into something that.
That's awesome.
Could cause some trouble.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If you don't have title insurance, like let's just say that Aaron's friend said, you know what? I don't care if I don't have title insurance. I'm gonna buy this anyway. And they did. And then somebody comes and
Great.
and the seller's going, yoo-hoo, whatever. But then later somebody comes along and says, I own this land. She could be hosed for buying this land. Like you want the title insurance to protect you from.
And again, it's a one-time fee. People, they're like, it's insurance, we don't need to do that. And also something I do want to tell you guys, I keep getting these questions. You see these commercials for title lock, like during the day usually. Okay, so this is commercial and it really it alarms some people and it kind of scares them into like buying this product when all they're really doing is getting the last deed of record from the county city building, which you guys can do for a free charge. So what they're doing isn't illegal, but they there's no need for you to pay for that service.
Use fear.
Correct. And it's mainly my mother-in-law who just retired and she's home all the time. She's like, are you sure? Because this commercial is very convincing. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
yes.
Yep. All right. So the next classes that are coming up. So financial readiness, if you want to see that class, we have a recording being put together from that April class. And then this one we're recording on Zoom today. And then we'll do August submitting an offer, which is going to go through all the details of the purchase agreement with a little chart. And then what happens from pending to closing in more detail than we were able to get to today. And then let's see what else. Yeah, we have just like a minute or two for questions. And I would rather just like close this out, let people leave that need to leave. And then those of you that have more questions, we'll keep the recording going. Because I have a list of questions from you actually, Georgia, that you had emailed. So I don't know if we answered all of those. So yeah, so any questions from the gallery, Michelle, Jill, Billy, before we
I
close
do want to
out?
let you guys know on the back of your chairs is a little Meridian title bag and inspired by some earlier events today. Diane got caught in the rain. So I've given you a poncho. There are some towels and there's actually a pizza cutter, which so for you.
Thank you. That's in
Yes,
the back of
yes.
your chair. Very cool. All right. So, all right. Thank you guys for being on. Thank you guys for coming. I'm going to go look through Georgia's. We're going to keep recording, but everybody's dismissed if you need to. Y'all can go if you need to, but I'm going to go through these questions and keep recording because it's already 6:30. And if you need to go, you need to go. Yep. So what's what in buying a house these days? I feel like we've kind of talked about that. Yep. What are we missing? There's a lot like drinking from a fire hose, really. There's a lot. And so I could tell you everything I know. Like I've been doing this for 18 and a half years. Like there's no way I could tell you everything I know, but just know that along the way, I'm here to hold your hand and walk you through it or Jason through it, whatever.
We're just made with shit.
Yeah.
And it's a good point too, because everything has changed in the last 5 years. If you bought 20 houses,
If you bought 5 years ago.
yeah, if you bought 20 houses, it's not the same. You're not an expert anymore.
Right.
My question was, if they end up with a divorce and he goes to buy a house, is he considered a first time home buyer or is he not?
If he's owned more than 3 years, right?
Well, so is he on the title?
I'm sure both.
Yeah, then no, he would not be. Yeah, if he's on the title of the house, then no, he would not be a first time home buyer.
Okay.
Even though I thought, if he had not owned in 3 years, if he'd been renting for 3 years, got it. Okay.
Or even if he lived there, but his name wasn't on the title, then
Right.
yes, he would qualify, but most likely his name's in the title, so he won't qualify for that.
Okay.
Just for shits and giggles, what if for some reason dad here needed to co-sign
Mhm.
to be on the title? Does that?
You can do that. It's going to increase, they're going to do your debt to income and his debt to income,
Right.
but you're on the hook. If he doesn't make payments, you co-sign
I think that.
and you can, if he's not paying and you are, but you own it just as much as he does. You're fully 100% responsible if you co-sign.
You're more likely to gift some money than instead of.
Co-signing.
Yeah.
But then down the road, let's say 3-4 years, he's on his feet, he can refinance it and take you off that.
Yes.
That's true.
I just did that for a couple who they own the house and dad co-signed initially to get them into the house. And we just actually we didn't even refinance them. They wanted a home equity line of credit. So we did a home equity line, but they wanted to get dad off the title of the house because he's up into his 90s and has moved into a nursing home.
Yeah.
He's still on the loan. We took him off the title.
What?
So we can even do some of that stuff. He doesn't.
Yeah, I don't want to be on the title.
So is that a quick claim thing, right?
Yes, yeah,
You just did a
yeah,
quick claim.
quick claim.
Okay.
So Meridian, we do have attorneys on staff. So if you do have any legal questions, you can always give us a call. You guys have my business card. They're very knowledgeable. There's not a clock that starts when we start charging you. So,
But I don't want to be on the title if I'm going to the nursing home because then they can use that as part of my asset.
Yeah,
Correct.
They can.
Correct.
Yes.
So he could be on the loan, not the title?
Yes, you can't, again, it depends on the loan type. And there's so many variables. It's so hard to give definitives,
Yeah,
black and white. Every scenario is
When I'm
is
sure that
different, but
someone's income changed
Yeah,
and that.
in many
helps.
situations, yeah, in many situations you can.
He's retired Army Reserve.
Mhm.
Would Jason qualify being a relative of, because he has his military papers,
I don't qualify for military,
pension,
VA.
VA benefits, but
No, but I don't qualify for a VA loan or anything,
Yeah.
Oh, you don't?
not as a reservist,
Mm.
Okay.
50%.
Then, no. Yeah, well, yeah, and sometimes when you get into special programs like that, you got to be careful, as you know, looking at the house, because not every house will qualify for USDA, for example, and not every house will qualify for FHA and.
USDA is a loan that like, kind of farm area houses get loans for that and they get special things from the USDA loan and stuff like that. So,
But there's sometimes when you start getting specific into loan types, you can actually cut out sometimes the right house for you.
well, we always ask,
So-
because his dad was Merchant Marines in Normandy.
wow.
Government never considered Merchant Marines part of the
Wow.
four branches of service.
But he's spot on.
Yeah,
Wow.
so
All
recently.
right. Anybody have any other questions? I feel like we covered them all. So, yeah.
For you to update all the information Eli would want to view homes, how would you want him just to email you his list?
Okay.
Or
You can do that and because I didn't do that yet, set you up a search. So, yeah, text works. I like text.
Do they still survey houses these days? I'm like, no, that tree is yours, it's not mine, it's.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can, and some people recommend, yeah. Some people recommend a survey on every home. I kind of feel like if it's in a neighborhood, you know where the lot lines are from the fence is already up. I kind of feel like it's an expense you don't have, but there's other people that are like, oh no, you should always do a survey, but it's, 800 minimum. Like a survey's like,
Okay.
I don't know, one less than.
Well, there's two different kinds of
you
well,
can
there's
go down
many.
and get your copy too, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for free, usually, or they'll charge you $1 a sheet or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But
So
you
there's a
can-
regular survey and then there's a stake survey and that's like really super intricate and that's like a couple $1,000.
Okay.
And that's kind
And
of.
it depends on the size of the land and like it's probably a lot less to do a neighborhood lot than it is to do one that's more farmland that's an acre, 5 acres or 25 acres or whatever. Okay.
Woods or not make a difference too.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
If they have to go through the woods.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, those of you that are watching online, thank you so much for watching and y'all have a great day. And I'm going to stop the recording. Stopping the recording. Bye, Michelle. Thank you.